Firstly, I'd like to thank everybody that's been wishing me well and asking me how I'm getting along with my health after my recent near-death experience. So, a little bit of an update. I'm breathing very, very well, feeling very good. A lot of the symptoms that I had before I went to hospital are gone and magically gone. They had still booked me in for some tests, which I'm continually having, and everything's coming up as nothing being wrong. So it's a good thing still to have the tests done to make sure everything's okay. So it still seems to be a mystery to the doctors on what has been going on with my body. So I'm presuming it's more of a metaphysical, spiritual thing that's going on rather than physical medical things that are going on, because they can't really understand much. I still have this really croaky voice. Some days my voice is totally gone, and other days it's sort of croaky and back again, and then other days it's normal. So I haven't been able to answer a lot of phone calls because I feel like I need to rest my voice a lot of the time, but still texting people. So thank you so much for your well wishes and the kindness coming my way. Something I've been thinking a lot about, I feel very, very different because I don't think you can go through a near-death experience like I've been through and come back and everything just go back to the way it was. I don't think that's possible because it opens your mind to so much more on what we're actually doing here. And I really don't I don't know what the feeling is. I don't feel like I belong here, and I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I'm just going to keep going through each day, working out. I'm sure one day there'll be some kind of revelation that happens where I understand a lot of this, but at the moment I'm in that space of not understanding it. But I have been thinking a lot because somebody asked me the question, so if we know the time that we're going to die and we know we're ready to leave this world, are we also the one who chooses to come here as a soul? Like, when do we choose that we're going to come into an earth life, and who are we choosing to come in to certain parents, to a certain family situation? I have a lot of experience and I've spoken to a lot of people, and I can sort of piece together some answers in that area, and they're very, very different in our choices. So when I'm doing a reading, I can actually connect to the soul of a soul that is going to choose to come into a physical earth existence. When they are coming soon, like in the next couple of months, it's like a close feeling. It's like they're just here. When they are coming in a year or 2 years, or maybe a bit further in the future, it's a feeling of distance. It's not that I see them in the distance. It's this feeling of distance, like they're going to take a while before they come. It feels to me that it's their choice. They are choosing to come, and when they are choosing to come. It also shows up that there is a alignment with the soul and the physical body. So a lot of the times, if the fetus is not physically forming properly, or there's going to be some form of disease or some disability in the physical body as the fetus is forming, if that soul has chosen a life of good health and wants to come into good health, and the fetus is not forming properly, the soul tends to abandon, and then the fetus quite often miscarries, or something happens because the alignment wasn't there between the soul and that physical body. But then another times, the soul actually chooses a life that will have a disease in it of some sort, or a disability, because that soul needs to experience what that is like to live in the physical plane like that. And they are either going to learn to accept it, excel at something, or cure it in some way. So it does feel like the soul does decide what kind of body they're going to come into and when. There's also that feeling that I get from the soul whether they're going to choose to come into a male or a female body. And I quite often have thought about this, like with myself, I ended up having 5 very healthy sons, but I also had 4 miscarriages and 1 ectopic pregnancy. And I often used to think to myself, I wonder if those ones that I lost were actual females. They were forming as females. And for some reason, I'm not meant to have female daughters in my life. I was only meant to have sons. So each time the fetus was developing, if it was developing into a female, maybe that was aborted, miscarried, lost due to my journey, and my contract with my children was to only have males in my life. So I don't have all the answers. It's just ways that I work through with the energy and what I can work out for myself. So another thing that has helped me understand choosing to come into the earth and having contracts with other souls. Like I always felt like I had a contract with my father that I was going to come into my life, into his life as his daughter. Our souls knew, and our souls are very familiar with each other. And our souls had a contract to come and play a role in this life as he's my father, I'm his daughter. He chose my mother. He chose my mother as the partner. So she became my mother. But I did not feel a soul connection with her. I only felt it with my father. And I believe we stay in the non-physical world waiting for all the souls that are to come and align up with our life. So even is the same with a partner. If you're going to meet a certain partner in this life who's going to give you so much value, and your soul connected, your soul mates, your twin flames, if you're in the non-physical world before you're born, you also need to wait for their non-physical soul to come into this earth so that you can line up at the right time on earth to meet each other. So everything is in alignment, isn't it? You're waiting on other souls. So that would also determine how long you're in the non-physical before you come into the physical world. And that made me start to think about when years ago, I did a past life regression. If you ever get the chance to do a past life regression, I highly recommend it. It is, for me personally, I believed I needed to be hypnotized and taken back. I went back through to being a fetus as I am now and my choice to come here. And I went back through, I think, about 5 or 6 different past lives in great detail. I mean, it was a good hour and a half that I was in this hypnotized, or it was a deep meditated hypnotized state. I personally would find it very difficult if I went to somebody else who told me what my past lives were, because I'm not sure I would believe them unless I saw it in my own consciousness. So they could tell me anything, couldn't they? They could tell me I was, I don't know, someone in Egypt or something like that. And I would, am I going to believe them? I felt it a lot more valuable for me personally to have experienced it myself, gone back through my past lives myself and seen everything in detail. So now I know it is in my consciousness records that I hold. I went back, first thing that the hypnotist was doing was taking me back to being in utero in my mother's womb and why I was coming into this life. And it made a lot of sense as to everything I learned in this life. I had to go through it so then I could teach others. It's all through experience, and I knew that. And I have known that even as a young child. I did dancing, and then I became a dancing teacher for a while. So everything I wanted to teach my children. I wanted to get people to see things in a different way, to open up their minds. So, and I do feel like most of my life I have followed that path. What I found very interesting was when I was born in this life in 1962. Then I went back to the life before this one, and I was a white female, like white-skinned, coloured female, and I know I died at the age of 23, and I was living in a time, I believe it was about 1862, so it was 100 years before. So that means when I died from that 1862, I did not come back into the physical here until 1962. So there was 100 years that I was in the non-physical realm. Now, there is no time there. There is no such thing as time. Time is only what we measure here in the physical. So it would have been, to my consciousness, there would have been no concept that I was 100 years in a non-physical energy realm before I chose to come back again. What I went through in that age, in 1862, when I was 23 and I died, I fell off a balcony to my death. And I could see myself wearing what it felt to me like it was in the US of A. It was the North and South War type period. And I was dressed in the clothing at that time. And there was a man there who was in an army type, or I think it was the Civil War, and he was wearing a uniform. I was meant to have a relationship with him, but I died early in my life and I never got to have the relationship with him. And I know that soul of that man in that life is the same soul that came into this life as the man I married for 30 years. So the experience I was meant to have with him in a physical relationship in the 1800s, it didn't happen because I died early from an accident from falling off a balcony. So we came back together in this life. He was born in 1958. I came in 1962, and then we met each other in 1980. And then we journeyed for as long as we needed to journey through a relationship. And now the relationship has come to its natural end. And that was what was supposed to happen back in the 1800s, but it didn't because I died. That was an accident. So there is accidents. I don't think that was a planned death. So our souls then came back together in a different lifetime to finish what was started, so to speak. I also know that early in the 1800s, I was also alive, and I was still in the US of A, and I was a black woman who had to work for rich people. So I did not feel, I went because I could see everything I was going through. I did not feel I was a slave though. The feeling I was getting from going through that life, I didn't feel I was a slave. I just felt like my work was to serve others. I also felt like I lived till I was in my 50s or 60s. I was a bigger woman. I could see exactly what I looked like. I know how I felt at the time. And I died, I believe I kind of died around the, say, 1840s. And then I came back again quickly, like within in the year of 1800s, I believe. From this experience I went through, I was alive in the early 1800s, and then I was alive in the middle of the 1800s, 1862. And then I was like 100 years in the non-physical before I came back again. And then before the life as the black woman, I went to a time which was like the 1400s, where I was a young boy in a very, very poverty-stricken cold place in England. I was in England, and there was like just nothing around, and everyone was poor, and we had to scrape for food. So was I then from that life to the next life, was I not 400 years in the non-physical? Because I didn't go to any lives between the 1800s to the 1400s. In that 400 years, I didn't go back with my hypnosis session into any lives on the physical plane. So did I spend 400 years in the non-physical, which doesn't, because there's no time there? Was I also waiting for all the other souls that I was going to line up with? Did I have to wait on their life journey and where they were going before we could all come together at the same time? And then I do recall, so that was sort of like my experience, but I recall this really vivid story of it was a young Indian boy, and he was only 3 years of age. And it was a documentary about people recalling their past lives, because some people, when they come from one life, they're in the physical, they go into the non-physical, and then they come quickly back into the physical again. They keep the memory, like the memory doesn't get left. It's kept very vividly. At the age of 3, he was an Indian child, and he was telling his parents that he was born the same day that he died. And he told them his name. He told them what his previous name was. He said that he was a man working in a shop, like a delicatessen type food type shop. And he was robbed. And he said exactly the day that this happened. So he said a man came in with a gun, and I tried to fight him off, and he shot me. And he shot me dead. And I knew I left my body straight away, but my consciousness did not want to leave Earth yet. I still had so much to do, and I just did not want to stay in the non-physical. So I came and found you, who was giving birth that afternoon, and I went into that body, and I came that afternoon. I died in the morning, and I was born in the afternoon. And then he gave so much detail, the name of who he was, where he lived, where his shop was. He knew everything. He knew he was married. He knew he had children. He knew the day, like the name of the shop, the street. He had all this. At the age of 3, he had all these details. So his parents obviously looked into it and looked up the records, and they found that, yes, a man with that name was shot in a robbery on that day, on the same day that their son was born later in the day. So that makes you think there was no sort of soul contract with the mother and that child in that circumstance, because he's just come in as a random, hasn't he? He's just come in quickly without sort of having it pre-planned. So then I started thinking, so maybe sometimes we plan our entry into this world, and other times is it a random thing where it's a spare of the moment? I'm just coming back. I've just decided I'm coming back. Is it us that decides we're coming back, or is there some universal force that says it's your time to go back? And something else that has I've learned, and listen, because if you listen to children, they have a wealth of knowledge that they recall. A relative of mine, my dear cousin, her son, he said to her, I guess when he was about 3 or 4, he said, I chose you as my mum, but I wasn't sure whether I was going to be born as a boy or a girl. He actually, because I know sometimes I get this really strong sense from a soul that they're going to be a girl, or they're definitely going to be a boy. And then other times I get like, they're not really sure what they're going to be. That maybe they're leaving it up to whatever it is. But he had not decided whether he was going to be a boy or a girl. That's something that his soul had not planned. But then I see other souls that do plan that. So I don't know that there's actually any set rules with this, is there? It can kind of just be whatever it's going to be, or we've planned it and we've got contracts with other souls. Because I think we know when we have those contracts with other souls because we feel so connected to them. You just know that you've known them before, and you feel something deep in your heart that you are really connected to that person, and nothing's ever going to break that connection as well. So yeah, there's so much that's been going on in my mind lately. And another thing I want to talk to you about soon, this will be a different subject. It's about some people that have had like a near-death experience or had something quite something quite disturbing happen to them with energy. So instead of it being where I went to the most beautiful, warm, peaceful place ever, the peace, I'm just sit there sometimes and I just think of that peace. I can't feel it like I did when I was there, but I can think about it. But some people don't experience that. Some people have experienced very disturbing, frightening and fearful energy when they've had operations or they've had near-death experiences. And I also want to talk about what they call it sleep paralysis, but I have a whole different theory on the energy that's happening. So I'll talk about that. It's a whole different topic, which I want to talk about soon. But today I just wanted to address, whether how we are choosing to come here and when we are choosing to come here and who we are choosing to merge with in our lives and waiting for. We could be on the other side for 100 years waiting for all the other souls to line up that we're all going to come into contact with in a certain time frame where we're on the physical. So I hope you're all coping with these ascension symptoms. There's so many people with headaches and thirst. I cannot get enough water into me. I'm drinking 12 glasses of water that's not like me at all. Drinking so much water and then still feeling thirsty. It's because we are filling up with light. We have all this light energy that's coming into our bodies and it's just making us thirsty. So keep drinking the water, keep resting. If you just feel like having a sleep, go and have one. It's kind of like we are in this energy now it's not all just going to happen on the 21st. We are in the energy now that is changing, and so many of you are feeling it. So I will talk to you soon, and I hope this is what we are Saturday here in Australia on the 19th of December and getting closer to Christmas. So I hope everybody has a lovely weekend. Thank you.